First of all, good morning. Thank you for coming to interview me on various issues. The illegal immigrants problem is one of the biggest issues, and it's also one of the toughest. Why? Because it has become a big monster. Big monster that is about to gobble us up. And how do you deal with a big monster? Okay, we have to look at what needs to be done first. And I think what needs to be done first is to ensure that the laws of the countries, the law of the nation is enforced. Okay, then you must have a policy to deal with illegal immigrants and foreign labor force. Because the problems of illegal immigrants in Sabah arose because of three factors. One is shortage of labor. The second is because of politics. And the third is because of the issue of the Sabah claim, the territorial claim. The most difficult and the most problematic now is the second factor, which is the political, which has become a problem for us, affecting the first and also the second. Why? Because of politics. The previous government, especially under premiership of Tun Mahathir at the time, exploited the illegal immigrants to become a political tool to oust PBS government in Sabah. So, because of that, we have this so-called Project IC that enable foreign workers or foreigners to have Malaysian ICs through the back door in order to enable them to be voters, even though they are foreigners. Some even have passports, but they have ICs and so on. So then they also, because of the desire to transform Sabah into an Islamic state, or a Malayan state, so to speak, that they can control, the system then under the government did not enforce the laws as they should on foreign workers. So we ended up with a huge number of illegal immigrants or instant Malaysian that has created social problems, security problems, and political problems in Sabah. And it also became a self-destructive problem, because then the Philippine claim, the Sulu claim, becomes almost legitimized. And so we have this other problem, which is the problem of security, the problem of political and territorial claim, continuing to become an issue. And in fact, recently it has become a big issue because the Philippines has revived, voiced out this issue again. So in order to tackle this problem, we have to look at our priorities. First is enforce the law. Close all the doors, including Jalan Tikus. That is number one. Number two, have an effective foreign labor and immigration policy. Third, you must engage with the source of the problem. Engage with the neighbors. Engage with the Philippines. Engage with the Indonesian government. Because you cannot tackle this alone. You have to tackle with your neighbors. And we are in ASEAN. So I think that is the other thing, that the other steps that we need to take. In other words, within that policy, we have categories of steps that need to be taken, including foreign labor policy. How do you manage this foreign labor while they are still in the country? What are your criteria, and how do you regulate them while they are here? And what is your policy with regards to them coming in and out? And that includes dealing with their neighbors. And then we need to tighten the security. And that also includes working with your neighbors. The security apparatus, the police, the coastal areas also need to be secured. And I think we also need to revive the border scout, because the border scout can take care of the Jalan Tikus. And then you need to tackle corruption. Actually, one of the biggest issue in the enforcement area is corruption. When the security people can be corrupted because they are human beings, then the security becomes useless, and therefore this needs to be tackled. And you need to engage. Well, we need to have an effective policy on how you deal with the claim. The government say there is no such a claim, it's not valid, and so on. It's not enough. You have to see the basis of that claim. At the beginning, when Malaysia was formed, one of the objectors was Philippines. And they say, well, if Malaya can claim, we also can claim. So if Sabah decide to be independent, then we have no issue. In fact, that was one of the conditions, a referendum and so on. So to me, one of the most important steps to be taken by this government in order to settle that once and for all is to recognize and to gazette Sabah's independence on the 31st of August 1963, the self-government. When colonies left, when British left, we are no longer a British colony, and we became independent, even if it is limited independence at that time, but that is our independence. And we sing our national anthem, Sabah Tanah Airku. And we say, Sabah Negeri Merdeka. Merdeka sepanjang masa. So it means we have been saying it, but we must recognize the 31st of August is our independence. Once we recognize and gazette it, there is no issue of the Philippine claim anymore. For good, it will be dealt with. So, to me, these are the areas how we should deal with the illegal immigrants. So when you enforce the law, then there should be no illegal immigrants. When you wipe out corruption, then there should be no way for people to come in because you're enforcing the laws. Okay, and when you deal with your neighbors, you work together so that these people don't just come over, then you deal with the problem. And when you have a foreign labor policy that is effective and a policy, a regulation of labor within the country, then you don't have foreign labor that overstays, and they're happy to work here, we're happy to have them, but we regulate them properly. And then when you gazette independence, then there's no more issue of claim. That's how I would deal with it. Yeah.
Dato', question number 2. Is it possible to round all of these illegal immigrants over a specified period and deport them?
Yes. The government should have a program, an operational program to deal with the illegal immigrants, and I think we involve all levels of society, from the law enforcement right down to the grassroots. You have Jawatan Kuasa Keselamatan Kampung. You must get them operationalized. You have RELA, you must get operationalized. So we get the police, and if we have the border scouts, then we work together with all the agencies of government, with all the employers, those who employ foreign labor. Then why can't we do that? We have done it once. Before, we can do it again, but I think we have to do it with more effectiveness, and it has to become a regular feature.
Okay, moving on to number 3. How would you ensure top positions in the federal departments in Sabah are headed by qualified Sabahans and not from the peninsula?
Well, I have always been an advocate of the Bonionization program. But Bonionization is one of the condition. When we form Malaysia, we put this condition, and therefore, to ensure that it is implemented, there should be a monitoring mechanism, a federal state monitoring mechanism on Bonionization. And then we look at all the departments, who are the people, are they Sabahan, and so on, to ensure that we implement the program of Bonionization. At the same time, we must have sufficient number of qualified people. We must have people with experience and with qualifications who can be made available to take over this position. It should not be that difficult.
Okay, number 4. Food security is a major issue, yet there are a lot of idle lands in Sabah. What do you think should be done about it?
Lots of things we should do. You know, Sabah, Sarawak, second largest state. That we have two of the largest states, and we have, as you say, vast area of land for agriculture. So we need to have a good agriculture policy. Food and agriculture industry must be strategically activated. Right now, I don't see that happening. So if I was in government, I was in a position to make policies and programs. I would look at Sabah as a food hub to produce, first paddy. Okay, we should be exporting paddy. We are importing paddy, maybe up to 70%. So why are we importing instead of exporting? That is number one. Number two, we are also we have land good for agriculture in other areas other than food. I mean, oil palm is one of them, but oil palm consumes a lot of land. It is not what I call it is not an economic use of land to plant such huge areas of kelapa sawit when you can have small areas and bigger income and economic use of land. I mean, take for example, you want to tanam lada putih, white pepper. You want to tanam cocoa. These are commodities that can fetch higher value with smaller use of land. We should maintain what we have on oil palm, but where is the oil palm going? We are not creating industries. We are not exploiting the added value. We should be producing meat. We are importing meat, including buffalo meat. But we have all this land, so we have to have a good strategic agriculture policy and food policy. So I would say we develop the land that are idle. Some people are going into precision agriculture. We should learn from Israel, from China, from Thailand, from Indonesia, even from the Philippines. So why not? I think it is up to the leaders, and I want to make sure that a new government has a new policy, and we become an exporter rather than an importer. And also, not just exporting the raw materials, but also create industries, value-added industries, so that we can create job opportunities. We are very near the markets, but we are also very far because we have no advantage. We have not created the advantage of our location because of this cabotage, and not only because of cabotage, but because of our economic activities that remains at the basic level rather than to be industrialized, and these are all connected.
Okay. Moving on to number 5, Dato'. English proficiency is vital. This would allow our youngsters to secure jobs overseas if unable at home and repatriate their income back to Sabah.
Okay, just a minute now. I forgot just now.
Okay. To recap to number 4.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, pineapple. Pineapple is a huge market. China is a huge buyer of pineapple. You know, they want to import 100 containers per month. The whole nation cannot supply, and that's only one company. You see how huge is the market. So even durian musang, they also cannot supply. And what more the other food? You have a lot of potential in highland all over the state in Sabah, because we have many highlands. Then we have this stainless tantadan ba, you know, the bee, which has worldwide market, but we are not exploiting it in a big way. You know, we should. We also have a lot of this babi kampung. You know, they have a huge market. It fetches very high price, but we are not exploiting it. In Tambunan alone, we have 25,000 acres of idle grazing reserve, but it's not producing. So we want to activate all those, and we must change the mentality of our people so that we become in tune, in line with the world condition. So we want to be an exporter, we want to be a producer, we want to raise up our income, and so on. So when everything is moving in the same direction, we will have a better success rate than if we don't do anything about it. Yeah, it's all up to the leaders, actually. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Coming to number 5. English proficiency is vital. This would allow our youngsters to secure jobs overseas if unable at home and repatriate the income back to Sabah. Would you follow Sarawak's proposal in this regard for English medium schools while strengthening Bahasa Malaysia, since Sabah has its own state education ministry?
Yes, we should emulate Sarawak on that, because English is very important language, because it is the language of technology now, and we are in the technological era of blockchain, of artificial intelligence, and we need to get our people to be proficient in the language. And tourism is also an international business for us, and we need to promote it in English, even in Chinese. So maybe not only English, but even Mandarin, and Mandarin also becoming a global language, and I think we should look into that as well.
Would you introduce a racial quota in filling state civil service jobs for the sake of fairness and ethnicity, since Sabah has many ethnic groups?
It is very difficult to put quota on every ethnic group because there are so many. I think you have to look at it in two ways. One is to use the meritocracy as basis so that we get quality people. It doesn't matter what ethnic groups. That is one. Second one is you have to have a guided policy on to create the balance lah. Balance between what? Basically, it is between Muslim and non-Muslim. Because you cannot really go into satu bah. And then maybe between Bumiputra and non-Bumiputra. But this, to me, should be a policy that is not there forever. But maybe look at it as a 10 or 20-year policy. Then after that, we drop all the any religious or racial thing, and then we go for meritocracy. That's how I would look at it. Then we will get the best people in the service, not because they are, they are Dusun, Melayu, Pajau, or Cina, no, but they are good at it.
Okay, we move on to number 7. Would your government focus on PR for Malaysians, as there are hundreds of cases of Peninsular Malaysians waiting for their PR in Sabah?
Would you like to repeat it?
Would your government focus on PR for Malaysians, as there are hundreds of cases of Peninsular Malaysians waiting for their PR?
Yeah, we are in Malaysia. We have policy. We have constitutional rights on citizenship. But at the same time, we have to, as we are Malaysians, we have to have this policy of permanent stay for all other Malaysians. Yeah, in fact, rather than opening up to foreigners, why not to other Malaysians?
Okay, question number 8 itu Sabah's strategic position which China, Japan, and South Korea puts it at greater advantage for international shipping than Peninsular Malaysia. This will improve our economy without relying on Malaya too much, as well as ensure more jobs for locals. Would this be a priority for your government?
Yes, it is. Our economy can only open up and progress if we look at Sabah and activate Sabah as a strategic center for trade and shipping, because we are in a strategic location. We are surrounded by our markets, but we cannot deal with it as long as we continue to rely on Port Klang. So my proposal, I have actually written to the Prime Minister on this, is to allow a second international port and container port in Sabah. Now we have Port Klang. Then we should have one here in Sabah, because we are in the international trading routes, and we are near to all these big markets. So we must have a second national container port in Sabah. With that, then we are near to the market. Import and export, we can become an international export and international port lah, container port. And what we need to do in order to realize that, in order for ship to come in here, load and unload, is to improve the facilities, to improve our infrastructure, to improve our economic activities, so that we can have products in huge volume to be processed here and to be put in onto the ship to be exported. Right now, we are not doing that. We are actually constraining the development of our economy because, first, our infrastructure is very poor. Second, we don't have a container international port. Okay. Third, we have this cabotage policy. So how do we develop Sabah? As long as we continue to be like that, we will be left behind. And yet, we have the highest potential. Yeah, the biggest potential is in Sabah. If we open up, say, the second international port, container port in Sabah, then we have good infrastructure to all the districts that are producing, including, say, interior. We should have an internal port there. Internal port. Yeah, to export their products there directly. Yeah, from the train into the ship. The customers will be there. Okay, but how do we do that? Because you have these mountains, and we have to spend, a long distance. So I think we can create a tunnel to open up the interior, create a tunnel there, which shorten it to maybe 8 to 10 kilometers only, and that would speed up the journey, open up the activities in the interior, because interior we have huge land areas, agriculture areas. We have huge tourism potentials as well. So we need to do that and connect to Sandakan, Tahu, Lahadatu, to Kudat, Tablu, and so on. So, yeah, we must put this as a priority.
Number 9. Sabah is doing much better in tourism, but infrastructure-wise, we are not comparable to Sarawak the past 10 years. What would you do to ensure our fullest potentials are not wasted?
Well, we need to develop our infrastructure. And in order to develop our infrastructure, you must have the funding. In order to have the funding and the support, we need to work with the federal government. So this is why the state government and the federal government must be in tune. They must be the same group of government, okay, so that they can support each other. This infrastructure requires huge funding, but not only that, it requires new ideas, new strategies. And we need initiative. The leaders must have initiative to plan and look at what is needed. You must have an economic mind, development mind, in order to do that. Right now, everybody is more focused on politics rather than on development. So, the second thing is we must get back some of our revenue rights in the Constitution, as stipulated by Article 112, C, D in the federal constitution. The 40% revenue. We must have a better share of the oil revenue so that we also can do much more than what we can do now, because right now we only have 4 or 5 billion the most in state revenue. But if we have the constitutional rights, we will have more than 10 billion a year in state revenue. Maybe between 10 and 20 billion. That would be huge. We can do a lot, because we need the money to develop all the potential wasted areas in Sabah. Even the villages, if we develop the villages, they contribute to the development of the districts, and the district will contribute to the development of the state, and the state will contribute to the development of Malaysia.
Okay. Moving on to number 10, Dato'. Sabah is the second biggest state in Malaysia and can accommodate 10 peninsular Malaysias in one inland area. But these 10 states have their own state governments compared to one state government, resulting in allocations and resources having to be shared by all these districts. In the light of this, is it not better to administratively separate Sabah in terms of east, northwest, and south, as in Kalimantan, for better development efficiency?
Yes, you can do better than that. In fact, I have always advocated that Sabah and Sarawak should be further divided into states, regional states, equivalent to the states in Peninsula. Because right now, we are treated as one unit. Sabah have one unit. In Semenanjung, they have 11 units, maybe 12 now with the federal territory. That is not fair. Even our districts are bigger than some of the states. So the idea that we are trying to introduce is to relook at the residency as a boundary to develop the state, regional development based on the residency system. So I have proposed that in Sabah we should have 5 or 6 regional government. Whether you call it residency or province, it doesn't matter, or even states. But we need to do that. Otherwise, we continue to be treated as a unit when we represent 10 units, in Peninsula, and Sarawak even more. I noticed that even the television does not portray the reality of Sabah and Sarawak within Malaysia. If you look at the map, sometimes in the background, they put Malaya bigger than Sabah and Sarawak. They want to kasih kecil lah. That is wrong. Why they do that? Maybe because they think Sabah is a state, just like a state in Peninsula. No, Sabah and Sarawak are partners in the formation of Malaysia, and we are independent states. We have special conditions. We are huge. So that we should look at this as 3 regions, 3 partners. And therefore, it is appropriate that we create regional systems, break Sabah into regional system, administrative system or development system, residency of provinces, in order to speed up the development. And we need to do that quickly. What we need now is the federal government and peninsula leaders to appreciate that. I have said this in Parliament. Hopefully, now that I am in government at the federal level, I can convince our federal leaders to look at it from our point of view, not just from their conventional view of looking at Sabah and Sarawak.
The unemployment rate in Sabah is one of the highest in the country. This was made worse with COVID-19 pandemic. What steps would you take as Chief Minister to reduce it in the next 4 years?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is to find out the facts lah. The facts about our unemployment, where are they? What are they? What is the problem with them? Second, we look at our potentials. Potential in agriculture, potential in our development, potential in our industries. We need to activate all this in order to create jobs, job opportunities, and also employment opportunities. And if we can activate all the sectors, agriculture sectors, the industry and trade sectors, the manufacturing sectors, the pelancongan sectors, and also don't forget the technology and artificial intelligence areas, the blockchain technology and so on, and our oil and gas industries. All this can create thousands of employment. And I think we need to have a master plan to do this, and we need to activate the plan quickly as possible.
Okay, number 12, Dato'. Why should the people vote for your party in this election? What would you say are the special qualities, or what does it have that rival parties cannot offer?
Well, they should vote for a party that have a vision, a party that have a perjuangan, a party that doesn't fight for personal positions, not just to win election, but also to develop the country, fight for our rights. And I think this is where Star is special, because as a leader, I am special. I've been fighting for the rights 30 over years. And I have climbed the ladder of my perjuangan to the point that other political parties are just starting to voice out, to copycat what I have done 30 years ago. I'm now in an area where I have convinced leaders and the people, as well as federal leaders, to agree, to understand what we are fighting for, what we are demanding, the state right, our position in Malaysia. Now everybody is convinced. The people are convinced. The leaders are convinced to the point they are fighting for it. The leaders want to offer it in their manifestos. So I am already out in stage 5. The other political parties are in stage 1. Yes, they are there, but they say dulu Dr. Jeffrey sini, tapi now he is not there anymore. He doesn't talk about it because they are still there down there. I'm already up there. I mean, if we have convinced them, if they are now offering, including Mahathir, it's time to implement. It's time to to realize it, to work out a plan how we can deliver. It's not the time to shout and say, we want this, we want that. We have passed that stage already. And I think of all the political parties, we have been the most consistent. Of all the political leaders, I have gone through it all. I have done my part. I have fought my way. And I want to ensure that whatever I have fought for, whatever I have sacrificed, eventually will bear fruits for the people. So, if you ask me, what is our kelebihan? These are our kelebihan. That's why they should support STAR, they should support our candidate, and make sure that we have a place, because we are fighting for you. We are fighting for Sabah, and not for ourselves.
Just one more. Okay, number 13. Sabah having so many political parties is a very bad example for the new generation. Why is it not possible to have a minimum number of parties?
Well, as long as the Constitution allows it, and people want to participate in the democratic process, they are free to create, political parties. So we cannot really say you can only have a minimum number of political parties. What we can do to reduce the number is to have what we call a coalition. Coalition partners will narrow the number of political parties into a groupings. So rather than single parties here and there, we have groupings of parties. And I think that is possible. It's possible to have limited number of groupings. And I think we are going towards that. For example, now we have BN, we have PN. Okay. Now these two also grouping into one in Sabah to become Gabungan Rakyat Sabah. So I think that is a practical way of reducing the number lah. So we work in teams rather than masing-masing. I mean, everybody is fighting for seats. Some parties want to standing all, but under this condition, you standing all, you win say 5. Can you form a government? I don't think so. But if I standing 5, but I'm in a team, my team standing and win 35, even with my 5 seats, I can form a government. Yeah, so that is the difference. So now I think in order to accommodate the various political leaders, political parties, we need to go into teams. We cannot go it alone anymore. And I think that is good, because then the diversity can merge and become a single approach. And I hope that we don't register more political parties, because most of the 13, 14 political parties, maybe half of them are inactive anyway. Buat apa mau buat party, but it is dormant. Kan? Yeah.
Okay. Number 14. How do you plan to resolve the chronic problem of elected representatives betraying the voters by party hopping after winning their seats?
Well, there are various options. One is to enact a law lah. But as long as it is against the constitution of freedom of association, then it will be illegal. I mean, it will not become valid, like what PBS had done before, because of article something in the federal constitution. But I think maybe we can do it other ways, no? We say that we have a kind of a ruling that will be accepted publicly, even though it may not be valid as a law, but it's a moral law where you sign a pledge that if you change your party and betray the people that vote for you, you will resign and have a by-election. In other words, if you go back to the constituency and let the people decide, and I think that should be okay, because the people that voted for you may not feel the same way, or may go with you, but you can vote again But ini boleh buat, but again it's a waste of time, waste of money. So another alternative is to have a different system where your second winner takes over, and the fellow have to resign so maybe there are other systems that we can introduce, and we can explore other ways Yeah.
Number 15. What is your party's stand on the issue of corruption?
We are against corruption because it is a disease. It is a disease, a social disease that corrupts the minds and destroys society. And therefore, the party is totally against corruption for that reason.
How do you plan to address the issue of fairness and equality in the civil service, such as in promotions?
Say again?
How do you plan to address the issue of fairness and equality in the civil service, such as when it comes to promotions?
Actually, this should not be an issue if they follow strictly the scheme of service. The civil service, they have a scheme of service. Scheme of service rules out what is your qualification, what is your criteria for promotion. And if you follow that, you should have one good basis. The other one is to make sure, in addition to the scheme of service, then you must have a meritorious criteria, So between two people, or maybe three people, who are qualified to be promoted, but among them, only one has to be promoted. Who is to be promoted first? I think should be dependent on their performance and their punya merit to be promoted. Equally, maybe they have served sama-sama semua 10 tahun. Based on the scheme, they can be promoted. But what is their performance? What is their punya KPI? Okay, so we must base that on merit other than the schemes of service.
Number 17. What assurance can you give to continue the fight for Sabah's rights and entitlements when the going gets tough without compromising the trust that voters have placed on you?
What is?
What assurance can you give to continue the fight for Sabah rights and entitlements when the going gets tough without compromising the trust that voters have placed on you?
Without compromising the...
Compromising the trust that the
Oh.
voters have placed on you.
Okay. Well, I have been fighting for state rights, whether I'm outside or inside. There's no compromise. The only compromise is actually to talk to other people. I mean, for example, okay, you want to fight for our revenue rights, 40%. The federal government has collected our money. You need to return the 40%. According to the constitution, it will also be based on whether the need for the state, is there, and second is the financial position of the federal government. That needs to be discussed. In other words, not that the 40% cannot be paid outright, but how much can be paid based on these two now, in order to have a kind of a acceptable amount. If you cannot pay 40%, say 10 billion, maybe because of the conditions there of the state and the federal financial position, maybe can pay 5 billion. And agree on this until further notice for the negotiation. Okay, otherwise I think there is no compromise. We must implement what is in the constitution. I am fighting for that before and even now. If I am not in the government, I will just be shouting. I'll just be shouting and get the people to support me to shout. But maybe at the end of the day, I don't get anything because the government will not listen to me. But now I'm in government. I look at it from the inside. Okay, so it's up to me how to convince the leaders, how to convince the prime ministers and the system, how I can implement and realize those rights. So there's the people have to keep the trust in me, because my fight never change. I have to get what the people want, what the state is entitled to. So the people must continue to keep me the trust, because I'm almost there. Okay, so actually it's not just the leaders in the federal government. I think the more difficult eventually will be the civil servant at the federal level, because they are the one advising the leaders. Okay, and I have heard that they are the one blocking this. So the question is, how do we overcome that? And I think the political leaders must work together. This is important because if we don't agree to implement, then what is the purpose of Sabah and Sarawak being in Malaysia? We are being exploited. We don't want to be exploited. What is the benefit of being in Malaysia if we don't implement what has been agreed? Eventually, if we don't do that, then Malaysia will break up. So at the end of the day, what do you want? You want Malaysia to break up, You want Malaysia to be strong and progressive. So, the ball is in the federal government's court now, in the leaders, including the civil service. What do they want? Okay, and I think the people have to support us all the way, in order for us to fight all the way until we get it. And I will do that as long as I can, as long as I'm alive. I will do that. But if the people don't support me, how do I put it across? The government will not listen to me. Oh, dia bilang tu orang kau tidak support kau. Okay, so we must do this together, and I hope that eventually Malaysia will be safe. Malaysia will be progressive. We need to create a new Malaysia, where Sabah and Sarawak and Malaya are partners. We may even need to create a new constitution.
Would your party consider an alliance with Warisan Plus or other loner parties to form the government?
Well, we cannot say anything now. In politics, anything is possible. But for now, we want our group to win. We want Perikatan to win. We want Gabungan Rakyat Sabah to win. What happens afterwards, we will deal with it afterwards. First come first. Yeah.
Okay. Last question. What are the 3 priority issues that you will tackle if your party is elected to power?
Well, number 1 is security and the illegal immigrants. Second is the economic development, our economy, and the third is industrialization. Okay, but industrialization and economic development may be part and parcel of the other. So I would look at the reorganization of the state government and regionalization of our government, so that we can create clusters of development. Maybe south, north, interior, east coast, west coast, and so on. That is based on what we talked about earlier, dividing Sabah into regional hubs, regional administrative centers, and so on.